Hi, this video will be a continuation of me installing the Centrify Server Suite Standard Edition. In this specific video, I'll be installing the Windows agent, the direct authorized piece, the access, not the auditing piece, just the privileged identity management for Windows. So what I'm assuming is that you've already referred to the other videos. You've already seen my standard install for setting up the OUs inside of AD, setting up the zones, and have everything ready to go. So please refer to those other videos for setting up all the back end. For the Windows machine, again, make sure the backend's all verified. Make sure we have a test user. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we're logging in with the test user on that Windows machine, that the agent's working correctly before you start adding in privilege applications and things like that. Just make sure you can get a user to log in. So we want to make sure we have all those policies ready to go. We got to obtain the agent installer. So from the main Centrify Server Suite bundle zip, whether it's the Enterprise or the Standard Edition, if you unzip that, there'll be an agents directory, and under there you'll see the Centrify agent for Windows, and I'll show you that when I do my install. And the only preparation is make sure the Windows machine is already joined to Active Directory. So let's start off first with my back end. Again, just a little repeat from what some of the other videos. I've already set up my back end. I have a global zone. I have 3 children's zone. I have a Windows as one of my children's zone. And if I right-click on Windows and do Show Effective Windows Rights, my test user that I've been using all these videos is Diana Worth. She's an admin across the whole world, Unix, Windows, and everything, and Macs. So she can log in. She has the Windows login right, and so do administrators. I've done that as well. This is a backup plan. My DBA guys they're in the administrators group. And the way I did this is under I have nothing under computers right there, but under authorization, I did the role assignment. Again, I defined everything globally. And my Windows rights and roles and everything under there, I'm just using the default out of the box. So they're defined globally, and then I'm doing the assignments down at the child zone level. So this is where I gave domain admins the right to log in, and my test user, Diana Worth, for right now. She actually is a member of domain admins, but it's okay to have the double assignment there. So I should all be ready to go. So now let's go over and do the install. On Windows 7, I'm logged in as Diana Worth. Go to my software. So when I unzipped the Centrify software, this is where it went, under here. So the Centrify, I'm doing the 2017.1 suite. If you go under there, this is where I would run when we installed the back end. This is the auto run for installing the whole back end zones and things like that, and getting the all the Centrify GUIs installed. There actually is no back end, again, for Centrify Server. There's no back end manager, but we have GUIs, and we got to set up Active Directory as our back end. We got to set up those OUs. So this is the auto run that brings up the main install here. And I could go out of here and just say install the agent. But if this was, say, a machine that it didn't happen to have this package on it, under the agent directory, here's the actual package I need. It's much smaller, so I could just take that package and copy it over to a Windows machine instead of having to copy over the whole zip. Or I could just run this from here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit next, accept the terms, hit next. So access and then audit. So it has 2 components, part of the agent. The access, you might hear it, we call it direct authorized for Windows, or the privilege management for Windows. We're not going to install the auditing piece right now. We'll do that in another video. I'm okay with the installation here. Hit next and then install. Only take a few seconds, go through a wizard, and then we'll have to reboot. So we're going to do zone mode, so we'll have to install, we're going to have to join it to a zone. Obviously this Windows machine is already joined to Active Directory, so I don't have to join it to AD, I just need to join it to Centrify Zone, as we did with the Macs and the Unix machines as well. So I went through the, that bottom left button was clicked, so it said go through the wizard, hit next. I'm going to join to a zone is what I want to do, and I'm going to pick Windows. This is a backup option here. In case you didn't do what we already did, we made sure domain admins can log into the entire Windows child zone. If you hadn't done anything like that, it's looking at the actual computer and say, hey, don't lock yourself out. Do you want me to add this for you? We're going to say, no, that's all right. We've already taken care of that. When you join a machine to a zone, it's kind of like a firewall, deny unless explicitly allow. So if you forgot to explicitly allow some people to log in, nobody can log in until you write that policy. So that's why it's prompted me for that domain admins. We took care of that, so we're all good, and now we just got to restart. Gotta reboot the machine. I'll pause the video for a second. My Windows 7 machine has rebooted, so now I can log in. Now that I have the agent on, only people that have been set up to with policy to log in can. So make sure my Diana Worth can log in. I explicitly allowed her, plus she's part of the domain admin, so there you go. All good, and Centrify is running. You see this down here, this little on the bottom right shows that Centrify is running. We can get into desktops and what they mean in another video. So when I go into the Start menu here and look at Programs, on the Centrify Suite 2017, I can look at the Agent Control window panel and then Direct Authorize. I'm going to click on that. And again, I'm a local admin already, Diana Worth is. So here's the control panel. We can do some things inside of here. If we want to move to a new zone, I could change that here. The most important part, it says connected. So we're working, the agent's working good, everything's all right. I should have got my policies, everything's connected and fine. The platform instance is when you connect to Centrify Identity Service and the Privilege Service, usually running in the cloud, but could run on-premise as well. What we're going to do here is, that could be for another video as well, but we don't need that right now. So this is just Centrify Server Suite. I don't need to connect into the other products right now. So we're working good. Diana can log in. But only Diana can log in, and I have explicitly allowed anyone else. So let's show you that. I have another test user, a regular user who's not an admin. So let's log in as that person. His name is Chuck Webb, and Chuck Webb is a web architect. Go figure. So I'm going to log in as this other user and try to anyway. I should not be allowed to. So there you go. Not allowed. Not authorized. So what I'm going to do is make him authorized. So go back over to my Direct Manage Access Manager. So Chuck Webb is actually part of the architecture team. I could allow him to log in, or I could allow his entire group. If I look at Chuck Webb and look at his member, there's a group there. So let's let the entire team, so that way we're doing role-based access control, this AD group. Instead of saying Chuck Webb, I'm going to do the AD group for all the web architects and allow them to log in. So under the role assignments here, I'm going to right-click and do Assign Role. Just like we've done before in the first videos when we did the Windows logon to these two up here, Domain Admins and D. Worth, I'm going to give the Windows login. I always want to grab from the global zone the Windows login role from the global zone, just like we did before. This time I'm going to give it to an AD group, the Architect Web. And then click OK. So now if I, oh by the way, this computer's now, so if I refresh, should show up. There you go, there's the Windows 7 machine. So now if I right click on this Windows child zone and say show effective Windows rights, now you notice that Chuck Webb can log in. And he got that from, if you go down here, the Windows login role. So he can log in, but he's the part of this web architects group. They probably need some advanced things they can do. We need to configure some privilege management here. There's a couple applications. The local firewall, he's doing some coding and he needs to turn off the firewall and try different ports. Maybe he needs to go in the event viewer and look at the security logs. And I'm going to add disk defragmenter because that's an easy application you can test that requires advanced privileges. So we can give them people the right to run applications with local admin privileges, for example. So that's what I'm going to do. So the idea with Centrify is rights and roles. So if we look under authorization, I like to define everything globally. You have rights and roles. Unix rights, the right to log in and certain commands. We haven't defined anything yet in Unix. And on Windows, the right to log in, there's a default role. There's that Unix login role and the Windows login role. And then we have some other rights inside here. So we can give them the right to run certain applications. So you define all the rights, all the applications they can run and how they can run as. Basically a sudo for Windows, if you're familiar with Unix sudo. So I'm going to allow them, I got to define all the applications someone can run, and then you take rights and put them together into a role. And then you assign that role to a user or an AD group at a zone level. So again, you define rights, put them into a role. So we're going to make our architecture role. And now I have that defined, and I can assign that architecture role down at the Windows child zone to either Chuck or his entire AD group. So how do we define applications? So inside the Windows rights definition, again, I like doing it the global zone. Let's show what rights are. You right click and say add a right inside of here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add predefined rights. So I don't need to add a right. Instead of defining it myself, Centrify already made a bunch here. So I say add predefined rights. Look, there's a whole bunch in there. We've already gone through the task of defining all of these. So let me show you what's already in there, by the way, because we don't need to do it twice. So there's already an application manager and a Windows feature manager. So if I go up here and say add predefined rights, I can click on one, hit my shift button, go down the bottom, click on the other. Oh, come on, that didn't work. There we go. And then highlight them all. And then I want to get rid of the duplicate. I don't need the application manager again. I don't need the Windows feature because they already came in there. Click OK. And now I have all these rights inside here. So the way these rights work is you define a right, I give it a name, and then under match criteria, I'm matching it. These are all ORs. So I can click on any one of these description, and I'm matching an application name or an older name. And I can give it a path. I can even import a process. So this is SQL, and look at the path. I have an owner, I have a file hash, I have versions. So you could really fingerprint this application to a specific version. You can run it at the application version 11, but not version 10 and those kind of things. So you can really get down to fingerprinting these applications. I don't need that right now for distfrag. It's already been made for me. So just for distfrag, I got some criteria. And then run as. This is what you're going to basically raise the privilege. So instead of raising the privilege to another user, keep the same user but adding group privileges. This is privilege management for Windows. What we're doing is actually modifying the security token. I'm going to modify the security token and give this person local group admin, the local group of admin, just to run this application. All right. This is raising the privilege to have this group privileges so they can run certain applications. So for distfragmenter, they're going to run as local admin group. Here's reauth. So just to run this, I don't have to ask them for anything again. I can ask for reauthentication. So when I go to do this, it asks me for my password, or if I log in the smart card, it's going to re-ask me for my PIN. Or I can actually do Centrify MFA, multi-factor authentication, sending text to phones, things like that, RSA tokens, all kinds of stuff like that we can hook into our MFA functionality. But that requires a different product, Centrify Identity Service, and we'll get into that in another video. So this right here, we're just making them reprompt for the password. If you don't want that, we can just have no reauth. They're already logged in and just allow that to work. But again, that's optional. You can define that for the role as you want it. So I can, let's go ahead and say current user credentials. So I have to reprompt for my password. All right, for distfragment. But I won't do it for event viewer or the other ones, just to show you the difference. So I have a couple of these in here. So now I want to take a couple of these and make a role for my web people. So if I go into role definitions, I'm going to say add role. And this role is going to be for my web guys. I like to call it, good naming conventions, role, Windows, and then web architects. So web architects, I go click on system rights tab. This is not anything with Unix, so that's fine. I unclick that. Windows, can you log at the console? Login remotely is allowed. I'm not doing any MFA. I don't need to worry about rescue rights right now. And then I'm pretty much done. This is if you're using Centrify's auditing, you can require auditing to be running for this role to even allow to be worked, but we're not going to do that. I don't need any custom attributes. So I'm okay with this. Hit OK or apply. So now I have the role, but I haven't put these rights into it. So now I got to click on that role, either right click there or right click over here, and I'm adding a right to this role. Remember, I just defined this role as a Windows, but I have some applications in here. I want to add distfragmenter, event viewer, maybe firewall. What does the web people need to do? I'm just going to say they need to run the firewall, distfragmenter, and event viewer for security logs. So I'm going to go into my role, say add right. I have a whole bunch of rights in there. I can just say Windows rights to narrow this down, event viewer, distfragmenter, and Windows firewall. So there you go. And then I added on distfragmenter, and that right prompts for a password, the other ones don't. So now I have this role defined. So now I can assign that role to users or to AD groups at a zone level or a computer level. I'm going to do it at the zone level of Windows. I'm going to go down to authorization, role assignments. I've already given this architecture group the right to log in, but now I'm giving the right to run certain applications with elevated commands. So pick that role we just made, click Add AD Group, change it to Group, the architecture web. Now that I'm assigning that role to that AD group, and there you go. So these architecture guys, they can log in and they can have these roles run all these extra applications. These applications for the web role. So just to verify, I can again right click on any zone and say show effective Windows user rights, and look at my Chuck Webb. He not only has the role of Windows login, he has the role that I just defined, which what does it allow him to do? It runs, if I click on applications, look at these applications he can run. He's a built-in administrator. So in Centrify, again, there's no back-end server. I'm actually storing all this inside of Active Directory, inside a domain controller. So I just made changes like a Windows group policy or Active Directory users and computers, that kind of thing. You're actually changing it on a DC domain controller, and there's DC to DC replication, and then our agents connect to their closest DC every X number of minutes. By default, it's 20 minutes, and he says, hey, I'm going to grab a new policy. Do you have one? No, okay, or yes, here's my new policy. So I've just changed it on my DC. You got to wait for DC to DC replication, or if you have it in a lab, sometimes you can force that replication. I only have one DC, but my Windows machine might not connect to this DC for 19 more minutes to get its latest policy. It might be within a minute, or it might be 19 more minutes. So we have a way for the agent to refresh its cache. So you can, it's great for environments for testing. So I'm going to log in as dworth. So somebody's already, my dworth's already log in, and the Centrify tool is an admin tool. So remember that Centrify tool we ran earlier. If I go into here, agent for Windows Control, direct authorize. We brought up this Centrify direct authorize tool before. If I go to troubleshooting tab, some great things here. If you have some problems running diagnostics and things like that, we can look at the logs if there's any problems. But under here, authorization cache, hit refresh. So just refreshed its cache. So instead of waiting to see if that policy came down, I can force it. So now the new policy's down, so my Chuck Webb should be able to log in and do elevated privileges. So I'm going to log off. So now I should be able to log in as Chuck Webb. There you go. He can log in. Give it a second to prepare the desktop. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how when he kicks off, say, disk defragmenter, he's not allowed to run it with his regular ID. If he uses Centrify to raise his privilege, he'll be able to. I'm using a virtual machine here. I don't need VMware tools to be updated. That's fine. So I can go in here and go disk defragmenter, try to run it. If I do analyze disk, notice it doesn't let me do it. It takes privileges. But if I do disk defragmenter, right click, and say run with privilege, now it asks me for a password. That was because I changed that role to force me to. If I logged in with a smart card, it would ask me for my PIN here. So there I can type in my password. And now if I do analyze disk, it works. So I was able to use Centrify to raise my privilege. And if I prompt for a PIN or something, you just added, that's a form of MFA without using the CIS product, because if that was a smart card, I just two-factored. So I can just two-factor wrap any application using this Windows agent from Centrify. So in order to run it, it prompted me for something. Now, again, I'll show you with the other ones, you don't have to prompt it for a password if you don't want to. The other one here would be firewall. So if I go to run firewall, not allowed, permission, so then I run it again with the Centrify tool. Right click on it, and then there's run with privilege, a little Centrify icon. Now here I shouldn't prompt me for a password, there you go. No password. Again, you make that by the policy of that right. So there's the firewall rule, so I raised my privilege. Let's see, I can also do event viewer. I'm going to run it with privilege in case I want to look at security log. But what I'm going to show you is all these things that I've been doing with Centrify to raise my privilege is logged. So they go into, if you have the Centrify direct audit product, we'll pick it up. But even without that, we're going to go into the event viewer. So if you're setting this up as some kind of SIM product, ArcSight, Splunk, things like that, if I go into Windows logs and look at the application, look at the Centrify direct audit trail. That's in there. And this is actually saying, look, Chuck Webb ran something. I bet you it's my distifrag runner. So you look at it and it says what he ran, distifrag. So Chuck Webb uses Centrify to raise his privilege to run distifrag. And here is the running of the firewall and running of the event viewer right now. So again, that's this is using the Centrify privilege management to run it. And don't forget, I can either prompt him for a password or not prompt him for a password. So if this right here, right-click and run with privilege, if I logged in the smart card, that would have been a PIN. Now you just smart card wrapped any application you put on this machine. I could force two-factor with my PIN or a password or whatever to run that application. If you have the Centrify Identity Service, another service that runs in the cloud primarily, CIS, that comes with all the extra MFAs like sending a text to your phone. We have a mobile app and things like that, one-time tokens. We could do that as well. That could be the MFA that prompts up there. But within the Centrify Server Suite product itself, without going to the cloud, without talking to CIS, we can actually do a reauth. So it's just asking you for whatever you authenticated into, either your password or your PIN. I can redo that. So that's really it. Again, use the Centrify agent to install on a Windows machine. I had the backend zones already created. Join it to the Windows zone. Everybody can log in who are admins. I allowed Chuck Webb's group to log in. I gave Chuck Webb elevated privileges to run certain applications. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you very much.